Before colonization, Two-Spirit people were so important to their communities. I've always had to fight through being proud to be Indigenous. We are one generation away from losing all Two-Spirit knowledge. It makes space for the fact that the world has changed. Can I identify as Two-Spirit, or what is Two-Spirit? You don't need permission to occupy your own space. You don't need permission to be who you are. Just be who you are.
How's it going, guys?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing way better. The craziness of the day is over.
Yes.
The sun has gone away. You were able to cool down a little bit. It was hot today.
It was toasty, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever been so sweaty in my whole life. I like this lull, this like relaxing. We're good. It's awesome. It was a great day though. It was a really good day. I was very happy to see the turnout we had. So yeah.
So was it your guys' first time doing a Two-Spirit event like this?
Second.
Second?
So we did Two-Spirit Day last year as well.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the first ever one that we did. So we started with a pipe ceremony last year.
Uh-huh.
It was Elder John Sinclair who was our elder last year. And then Corky came in today to do the pipe ceremony, and it was really good. It was my first time doing a Two-Spirit event, that's for sure. But it was really fun. And Shannon's really good at planning anything. So I just like spreadsheets. But yeah, no, it was awesome.
I can tell you guys work really well together.
Yeah, it's definitely fun.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey with the Friendship Center. Like, how long have you guys worked there for? What led you to working at the center? And
yeah, I've been here almost 2 years. Wow, how long have I been here? 2 years now, I think. I bet 2 years in November.
Okay.
Will be my 2 years. Yeah. I just kind of finished up school with I was doing my Justice Studies diploma, and was really just kind of looking at like, okay, I'm doing all this volunteer work. At the time I was chair of Central Alberta Pride and had lots of fun doing that, but I was kind of, when I went back to school, I was like, at some point I really need to make a living doing stuff like this. So it was really just kind of like, how do I get paid to do the stuff I love? And the Friendship Center was advertising for Two-Spirit program developer type thing. And actually one of my friends had applied for it, and she said, I'm taking this job, but I'm only holding it till you're done school, and then this is your job. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. And that turns out she was right.
So you just got kind of voluntold into it?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
a little bit. It was just kind of one of those things that it fit really well with my degree, and fit really well with the community work I was already doing. And it was just kind of that natural progression where I was like, yeah, I probably am going to end up there anyway, so might as well start here.
Those moments always are the best situations too. It always has to happen naturally and kind of out of pocket, hey?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's always, they always say like, it's who you know, but it really is. It's like, when you're a good fit for something, people are going to come to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. They'll just gravitate. Yeah.
It'll be September 5th that I've been with the center.
Okay.
I originally was hired on as their receptionist, and then kind of like Shannon's story. Shannon was just like, we have this job opening and it is perfect for you. If you don't apply, I will be grumpy with you. And so I was told to put my cover letter, my resume in, and went through the whole interview process, and turned out I was a pretty okay fit. Yeah, you're pretty all right, I guess.
I thought you were going to give like a... Really?
Well, she makes me sound much nicer than I was about it. I said, hey, Emilee, give me your resume and cover letter by the end of the day today. And that was that. Yeah.
Amazing.
It was kind of a miracle, even just like applying for the receptionist job, because I was just sitting at my other job at the time and just like, I kind of hate where I'm at right now. And just started scrolling through Indeed. And then I saw that the Red Deer Native Friendship Society was hiring, and I was like, I don't stand a chance. Let's do it anyways. And then they called me back the next day. So it was actually pretty convenient. I love it. You should share your backstory about growing up in the Friendship Center, though. Oh, I spent so much time in the Friendship Center back home in Prince George. My mom's always worked, well, my mom being Indigenous, my mom's always worked really closely with the Indigenous community. She used to work for a place that assisted people who were diagnosed with HIV and AIDS. So we spent a lot of time with participants and taking part in events at the Friendship Center and another place called the Fire Pit. It was lovely. My mom did a really good job. I love her.
So you really did just grow up through the Friendship Centers then.
Yeah, that's why, like, when I got the email saying I had gotten the job, the first person I called was my mom, and I was just in tears because I was like, she's a Pisces. I cry about everything. It's fine. I cried about my tomato plant dying. It's fine. But first person I called was my mom because it felt perfect. Yeah. And it felt kind of full circle. And she was the person I wanted to talk to first because it was a dream come true. Absolutely. Exactly where I wanted to be. That's why I didn't think I'd stand a chance when I applied. But they were so kind to me and gave me that chance, and I am loving it. So I can't complain.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, the fact that you grew up pretty much alongside the Friendship Centers, do you think there would be a different parallel from someone who is just getting into it for the first time? Or, how do you think that affected you growing up, being that close to culture? Well,
I think every Friendship Center is so different.
Yeah.
And the dynamics are so different. The services are so different. Sure, there are a lot of similarities, but especially for BC versus Alberta, where Alberta is all like an association of the centers all throughout the province. So there was just, it still feels very different. It still feels like a completely different experience being on this side of things and this side of things, and just the way that they function and work so differently. And there's also like a decade of time between those two things, and those two experiences. So I would say it's probably the same as someone who's never grown up visiting or being a part of that community. It's still very different.
Still a culture shock. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, just moving provinces in general was a culture shock.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
BC to Alberta. Whew. Yeah.
Night and day.
Night and day. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good point though. Like when you're saying like when you first come into it, you're kind of like not really sure what to expect. Like one of my questions in my interview, I was like, now it's a Friendship Center movement. What does that mean to you? It's not a friendship stand around and do nothing. And so when I first came into it, I was very like, I'm really interested in being part of the Friendship Center movement, and continuing that work that we're doing in the community, and just kind of that importance. And especially for me, like I grew up away from culture. And so a lot of it has just been like reclaiming that culture through that experience. And we just get to meet so many cool people that, you get that like little bit of the culture shock.
Yeah.
But like I've never been so connected to culture, and that's pretty cool.
It's cool to be so used to throwing yourself into those senses of culture shock too. Every time you do an event like this, there's always something new that you end up learning.
Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Well, you have to.
Yeah.
I learned so much today, even just stuff about myself and teamwork and everything. It was crazy. It was a good day. It's just great.
Choosing this as your own healing journey too, it really throws you into the advocacy of healing through culture, which I find is absolutely beautiful. That's why I love seeing so many younger people working at these Friendship Centers and like taking initiatives to actually build events like this for people, right?
I wish I'd seen events like this when I was a kid.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure. Oh, right.
Yeah, I didn't even know that Red Deer had a Friendship Center until like I met you guys at the filmmaker event.
I didn't even know they had a Friendship Center until I saw the job posting. I'm just kidding. I did know, but oh yeah. Well, I've always known the Friendship Center was around. It was really like the size that was surprising to me. I was like, oh, this is more than just that front little office. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You walk into that office and you're like, wow. Yeah, there's so many people. Adventure.
Yeah, it's a crazy little maze you guys got going there.
Yeah, I like before I came to the Friendship Center, I really didn't feel like Two-Spirit was something I could own or like something I could identify as, just because I grew up away from culture.
Yeah.
I really didn't have any of the teachings. And one of the first people I met, she said, "Oh, big two-spirit energy, hey." And I was like, "Explain, what does that mean?" And she said, "Simply put, it means work." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And the more she kind of tried to explain, the more it was just kind of like, yeah, you jump in wherever you're needed, you contribute to your community, you are, like wherever you're needed at ceremony, sit by the door and they'll tell you where to go. And that was really kind of my first introduction to Two-Spirit, was really just like, yep, it's work and you're a person who jumps in where it's needed, so go do that. All right then. And it's obviously become so much more since then, but that was kind of my first little introduction to it. And I was like, wait, I'm allowed to identify as Two-Spirit? And they're like, "You're Indigenous, are you not?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, and you're queer, are you not?" "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, Two-Spirit." It's like, "Huh, okay." And that was kind of that. And even after that, I was kind of like, no, I don't really know. Like, I'm still not that connected to culture. So it took a while when I really like jumped into the role at the Friendship Center. And then I was like, oh, I see what you mean now. And you just like, it's that growing journey. It's that you always have to have that growth mindset. And like Emilee was saying, like, we learn at every event that we're at, even the ones that we put on. And it's never what you expect to learn. It's always something a little bit different, or someone will say something that just kind of sticks with you. So from my understanding, you just kind of jump in where you're needed, and Two-Spirit means work because you choose to be those people. You choose to be the helpers. You choose to be the person who contributes positively. And the person who shows up for people. And so that was kind of where my understanding came from. And it's never the same definition that you get. Like, we can like define Two-Spirit all day long, but you're never going to get the same definition from the same person, because it's so based on like who you are and the role that you play in your community. And you kind of take that like strengths-based approach, where it's like, hey, I'm really good at spreadsheets and you're really good at talking on the phone and I'm really not. So let's do that.
It's the idea of fluidity, right? Which is why I find it so funny when you do come across situations where there are people trying to put these hard boundaries of what who can identify themselves as two-spirited or not. It's like, to be two-spirited is to hold that fluidity within your community, within yourself, within your masculinity, within your femininity, and just like you said, wherever you are able to fit yourself into the most that can contribute, you fit yourself into that. To put a hard wall on it is to go immediately against what being two-spirited is supposed to be all about, right? So.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a big piece of it too. Like, we have a lot of people who ask us like, well, am I allowed to identify as Two-Spirit? And I'm kind of like, well, far be it for me to give you permission to identify yourself, because that's self-determined. But, that's one of the primary questions we get just in our work is, can I identify as Two-Spirit, or what is Two-Spirit? And so you just end up having a lot of like really cool conversations, and they all kind of go in a little bit of a different direction. But it's kind of that like idea of like cultural allowances, or like cultural permissions. And it's like, you don't need permission to occupy your own space.
No.
You don't need permission to be who you are. Just be who you are.
You don't need permission to engage in culture.
You don't need permission to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's you find so much of that in so many different bands of these quote unquote traditional beliefs, that when you look back into it, it really just comes down to patriarchal nonsense that's been pushed on our people for generations.
Like, we weren't allowed to practice ceremony, or we weren't allowed to go look for those teachings or go talk to those old ones. And so we have what was given to us by a colonized world. And so you get a very colonized understanding of it at a very base level, until you kind of step into that permission, or like permitting yourself to kind of step into that cultural role and be like, okay, let's go learn.
Okay. Emilee, your turn.
So in there, can you ask me the question again? I'm so sorry.
I was totally kidding. We just ended like a really good conversation. We both just like stared directly at you.
Just like to put you on the spot. Yeah.
Talking about two-spirited roles through history, right? And how they've played an importance, how they've sort of evolved, how they've changed throughout history, how we view it now. The coin two-spirited wasn't a mass thing until the 90s. That's when it was really coined, right? But two-spirited people have been
Always.
a part of Indigenous culture for generations before that.
Yeah, and traditionally, post-colonization, I mean pre-colonization, two-spirit people were seen as divine and sacred and very important to their communities. And a lot of them held and occupied different spaces. A lot of them held their histories and held their healing. They participated in ceremony or often led ceremony. They were seen as quite important and needed in their communities. So a lot of that now is just taking back that space, especially because I guess I could touch on that at a different point as well. But even within our own Indigenous community, you see a lot of people who are hateful towards two-spirited people, which is really unfortunate because before colonization, two-spirit people were so important to their communities and they were seen so importantly. And it's sad that on top of two-spirited people having to fight for their space in a colonized world, they have to fight for that space within their own Indigenous communities as well.
Yeah.
And it's really sad to see, but one of the two-spirit roles is taking up that space, going in and educating people, spreading that awareness. And the more people that are educated, the more people that will understand, and hopefully that just drives away the hate.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Well, I think we talk about it all the time too. Like even around the office, we say like, well, it's our job as the two spirits to speak the uncomfortable truths.
Yeah.
And you almost get cocky about it. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, if that's your role to speak that uncomfortable truth, to hold that space, to be sort of that fluidity or the mediator or, you know, the person who jumps in wherever, it often means like, well, yeah, you're going to be the mediator. And it even happened today where we kind of not had to mediate a conversation, but really had to be like, you know, like it's really unfortunate to see division coming from within the community when we're already so divided. And even Corky was saying before she did the pipe ceremony, I had walked into the teepee and I said, all right, where do you want me? And she goes, I'm not telling you where to sit. And I'm like, but that's your job. And she's like, no, you are going to tell me where you sit. It's like, oh, okay.
Got it.
You told me where to sit.
Well, Corky told me to tell you where to sit, and you don't mess with Cookum. Yeah, no, but I think like that's even true. Like when we go to sweats, when we go to ceremony, we don't always know the elder, or if we do know the elder, each of them have different teachings or different values. Yeah. And so I'll ask like, hey, I identify as two-spirit. Where do you want me? And they'll say like, you know, like, where do you feel comfortable? Or if there's more men that day, they'll say, well, I'll sit on the women's side because there's more space. Or sit by the door so that you can get out when you need to. Or if you need to go mind the children or tend the fire or whatever, just sit in a place where you're handy. I'm like, oh, okay. I can do that.
Empty space.
Yeah. Filling in the empty space, holding that, making that space, I think too, is another one that we talk about a lot, is like, people don't want to be in that uncomfortable space. They don't want to be in the space that's ambiguous, or like you said, that leaning into that fluidity because it's uncomfortable. Yeah. And when people don't have that sort of like ticky box, or their
the titles, the labels, you know, the hard cut boxes. Yeah.
That's often like people will say like, well, do I belong at this event? Or do I belong in this community? And I think we see that with our Indigenous identities too. Like, how many times have we been called like Apple or whatever, where it's like you're too red to be off the res, but too white to be on the res.
Yeah, there's a huge polarity, parallel between the struggles that someone has to go through identifying as a two-spirited person and someone who is identifying as a Métis individual as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and the competitiveness of holding that space too. Like, it almost gets like to a point of like, why are we being competitive about it when we're here for the same reasons? Or if we're serving the same community? Like, we don't need to be so, I don't want to say possessive because people aren't possessions, but there's like a certain competitiveness to like, oh, well, I'm the two-spirit in the room, or oh, I'm the Métis in the room, or I'm the matriarch in the room. And it's like, it comes back to that idea of like, my people, and it's like, we're all people.
We're all people.
Yeah. You don't get to declare yourself top dog or the leader when we're supposed to be working all together.
Yeah.
When everyone's equal in a circle.
Yeah. Being equal and just, it's sad.
Yeah, that sense of needless competitiveness. Is that the right word for it? That's the right word for it.
Yeah.
That too is a post-colonized belief that was brought over here through patriarchy, through the monarchy of constantly putting yourself on top of that pyramid, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So you see that in the government structure, you see that in the workplace, you see that even on our reservations through our board members. You see like even the structure that we have to hold in order to communicate properly with the government outside of the reservations. It has to be that pyramid. It's hard to get away from that.
Yeah. Once it's brought in, it's hard to escape it when it's all anybody's known for centuries.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to not feel like part of the problem when you're in that too.
Absolutely. It's hard to feel like you're making a difference when you have to work with that structure still.
Yeah. And I think like even within that structure, like we have to fight so hard just to hold that space that then when we all gather and we get together, all of a sudden we're like, oh, we can just exist here. How do we do that?
Exactly.
Like I don't have to fight for my space. What do I do? Where do I sit?
Yeah,
Who do I talk to?
That's why round dances are so healing. That's why,
Yeah.
You just throw all of that pyramid structure out of the way and then you remember what a circle is, right?
Yeah. How about it, boss?
Hear me out.
I have something to say.
Yeah, here we go. This is my soapbox. You can see how pasty this one is, okay? So I've spent a whole lot of my life having to fight for just my Indigenous space to begin with. The only time nobody ever questioned me was when I was with my mom, because my mom is so dark. Thank you, Mommy. Thank you, Dad, for the lightness, though. And so, like, anything, like, especially when I moved here, because my elementary school was awesome, and all the Indigenous kids got to partake in what they called Aboriginal class. And they would put all us Indigenous kids together and they would teach us traditional crafts. There were no actual like teachings that followed those, but they would teach us how to do like medicine bags, rattles, drums, blankets. Like we got the opportunity to do that and that was amazing. I will be forever thankful for it.
That's really cool. It's unfortunate that the teachings of like why you did those weren't at the forefront with that as well.
But I wish they would have been. Honestly,
yeah, that's a little concerning, but it's cool that like I didn't grow up with any of that stuff going through public school. Like there was none of that for me whatsoever.
Nothing.
And then, well, moving to Alberta again is just such a culture shock because back home, there were so many supports. You go through downtown, there's like 5 band offices. There's like different band family services and different, like it's insane. And then you come to places like Red Deer and there's not a whole lot. And so especially when you're, because I'm both Cree and Métis. So my mom's mother, her entire family is just Métis people marrying Métis people, all from Red River, eventually moving towards Saskatchewan and then eventually landing in BC. And then my mom's father is Cree. And so I definitely have a lot of whiteness in me, but it's frustrating because I am so proud to be Indigenous and it is something that I have always been so close to. And again, I have to shout out my mom for making that effort as much as she could have with me and making sure to click the Aboriginal checky mark when I was in school. So that way I could partake in those things.
The fact that you had an Aboriginal checky mark says everything.
That's exactly what I was thinking too.
Well,
that's crazy for me. That's a culture shock in itself. Yeah. Like that's
what I'm saying.
Nothing like that here.
It's crazy coming to Alberta and seeing how different it is. It is like moving to a completely new country. And I know that sounds super dramatic, but I'm not wrong.
No, yeah, you're totally right. Well, it's just from my own perspective growing up, It took my whole childhood and my adolescence, a good chunk of my adult years leading up to this point to actually feel comfortable in my Aboriginality. Leading up to this point, I was pretty much told to not tell anyone that I was Native. Like I identified myself more with my Vietnamese side on my mom's side than anything else, right?
I'm really lucky to have the experience I do. And I can sit here and whine and complain, but like I'm so lucky that my mom never ever told me to hide it, or never told me to just not say anything. I'm really blessed that she did everything she could to make sure I was aware of where my family came from. And I was aware, like, my mom's the one that found my grandfather's side of the family. Like, my mom's put in all that legwork for me and my sister and my brother to be able to be where we are now.
Yeah.
So I am really blessed that I haven't had to go through the experience of just being told shh, because that's even, you see it everywhere, especially in Alberta.
Oh, especially here. Yeah.
Like, it just stuns me. And, you know, coming here, I am both grateful and sad because I have the opportunity to, with the minimal things I know, I'm not claiming to know a whole lot, but like, I'm glad to come here and work at the place I work at and help people learn their culture and be okay accepting it. Because even though I was raised being, you are Indigenous, claim that space, it was still really hard for me because of the way I look. Like, I remember calling my mom and being like, hey, Ma, am I allowed to wear a ribbon skirt? And she was like, yeah, of course you can. Why would you think you can't? And I was like, well, I'm scared that people are going to think I'm appropriating the culture, because you look at me and you would never think, even though it is something that's so important to me, it is half of me. And, you know, and I'm also proud of the fact that I'm Scottish, and I'm proud of the fact that I'm German, and I'm proud of all these things that I am. But, you know, I've always had to fight for being proud to be Indigenous, and it's exhausting. But it has taught me so much about myself, and the fact that, like, I have to be able to be loud, and I have to be able to fight for that space, and I have to be strong, and I have to tolerate a lot of crap. But you know what? It is what it is. And there are people who go through it a bajillion times worse. So I really can't complain. It's just sad. I want to see everybody who is Indigenous and so proud of it to just walk into that space and own it. Own it.
Yeah.
I could walk into anywhere in Germany or Scotland and walk into there and nobody would question it. But walking into an Indigenous space, I am questioned immediately because of the way I look.
It is crazy, the sense of the huge gate that is put on in front of this culture, in regards to how much Indigenous blood you actually have in your body.
Quantum.
Yeah, like how does that make sense in the idea of just wanting to indulge in this culture and to learn in this culture and to be able to pass this culture on so it can actually flourish, so it can actually evolve?
Right. And I think that speaks to the fact too, we were at a conference not that long ago, and one of the people presenting was like, we are one generation away from losing all Two-Spirit knowledge.
Yeah.
One generation. And that's because it is so gatekept.
Yeah.
And because it's people always questioning whether they can occupy that space. I even had a little moment on Saturday while I was going through, you know, what we're going to do for the podcast here today. And I looked at my partner and I was like, I feel like I'm not allowed to do this. I feel like it's wrong. And I feel bad. I feel like I am taking voices from other people who need to be heard more than me. And I had to listen to my super white partner tell me how I was wrong. And, I don't like, it's still that it's always going to be there. I think that like internalized,
am I allowed?
Like imposter syndrome, and it's there forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like to that point of that, am I the right person to speak to this? Because I've been in culture for such a short amount of time comparatively. It's like, yes, I am Two-Spirit. Yes, I can speak to this, but am I the right person to be doing that? Because we do have knowledge keepers. We do have elders who are far more qualified, if you want to put it that way. But there's a lot of people who don't love the visibility. There's a lot of people who, when it comes to that like gatekeeping of things, it comes from a place of like personal safety.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that really kind of hits hard for me is just like, where are our knowledge keepers? Where are our elders? How do you find them? Because so many of them have had to hide that part of themselves for so long that they're not even comfortable stepping into that place.
Well, and that fear, and then having the government just rip that culture away from you, making it illegal to even to practice that sort of thing, right? It throws it into almost a sense of tradition to stay away from passing this knowledge on, from passing it on to the masses, from being in front of camera. That doing this podcast and like being a videographer in the Indigenous communities, I noticed that tenfold. There's some communities where you just put the camera down. They will not accept that sort of thing on their land. They will not accept their teachings to be on camera, anything like that. But that's part of the problem too, which I understand where it's coming from. It's just such a struggle to navigate the evolution and the revival of our culture without using these modern tools, right? That's where it's dying.
Well, and the thing is too, is that when Two-Spirit in itself, you get the backlash of people who are homophobic and people who are racist, all under one grouping.
Yeah, it's
like
great.
You're taking just being fearful of racists and also being fearful of homophobes. Like, it's terrifying. Yeah. That's why, like, one of the biggest stories I still tell people to this day, when we were filming our movie, and we were all like, had a moment where we were all scared because that one guy was taunting us from his truck.
I almost forgot about that. That was a crazy moment.
That's what happened today too.
Yeah. We had someone drive by yell at us today.
Really? Wow.
The funniest part though was he said, "Go back to your land." And I was like, "We are on our land. This is our land. This is Asooahum." Like,
not only that, but you're kind of driving by on what used to be our land too.
Yeah,
so,
really.
The heck, I know. It frustrates me to my core that we want to do things. We want to do things that are culturally significant, and we want to educate ourselves and educate our community. And we are constantly talked down about it, and we're constantly yelled at by just random people who feel like they get the right to scream profanities at us from outside their stupid trucks that sound like crap.
Wow. And I mean, not only that, but you get the gatekeeping from within the culture too, where it's like, are you Indigenous enough to be Cree? Or like, are you white enough to be Métis?
Yeah.
And like, to that point of like fighting for that space, it comes back to that idea of like that permission to occupy the space and having to fight so hard for it.
I understand that to a point, but I also think that there's such a superpower in coming back to this culture in such a late stage. Just like with being two-spirited, just like with being Métis Cree, you get to see both sides of the proverbial fence. You get to see the wrongdoings of both sides. You're essentially an outsider, but you get to see both sides, and all of it's good and all of it's bad, right?
And I love watching people's eyes light up when they're like learning more about culture.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Oh, sorry. It's beautiful. I love seeing the way people look at our elders when they are just giving us knowledge, and the way that people just melt right into it.
And going back to land-based teachings too.
It's amazing.
When all you know is public schools, or if you grew up in a Christian household or through the church and stuff like that, the teachings that you grow up with there are not land-based at all. There's such a huge disconnection, and that's where you get the mindset of using everything as a resource rather than creating a relation with everything, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think we had the conversation at Empowered Filmmakers even when we were talking about like, how do we make sure we're not commodifying traditional knowledge? But on that same note, like, how do we make sure that we are capturing that traditional knowledge and bringing it into the contemporary? And that was one of the things, again, that got said today with our elders, was really their old teachings. They're based in really old tradition, and we have to make space for the fact that the world has changed.
Absolutely.
And so how do we bring that into the contemporary? Because they're still good teachings. And I think we get a lot of that like pushback from the community too, where it's like, no, they're not old, they're wrong. And it's like, you don't get to decide that. And that sort of like bringing it into the contemporary, even to the point of putting it on film or putting it on a podcast or having it in public schools, that there's a very fine line that we walk between now we've commodified it and we're making a profit off of it to we are honoring our traditional knowledge and bringing it into the contemporary so that it's accessible. And it's such a fine line between those two things. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges we really face, is that you cannot do teachings without a knowledge keeper. You can't do teachings without an elder. You can teach what you know, you can share what you know, you can share what's been shared with you, but we can't use the word like teaching. And that's almost that gatekeeping piece again, where it's like, okay, well, what's the difference between a teaching and sharing what's been shared with me? And I think there's a lot of hesitation to share what's been shared, for that fear of the backlash, or that fear of like, why are you taking this traditional knowledge and peddling it over there? And it's kind of like, I don't like that perspective, because that's not how I feel about it. And there's nothing we can do to control that narrative but educate people. And I think a large part of sort of like reclaiming and really reframing those teachings to bring it into the contemporary is the acknowledgement that, yeah, these are old teachings and the world has evolved, and we as a human race have evolved. And so how do we still really honor those traditions and those traditional teachings, especially with gendered roles? But also the acknowledgement that those gendered roles weren't constructed until residential schools, when they separated them into girls and boys dormitories.
Absolutely.
And so where did the two-spirits go? With whatever biological sex they presented as. And I think that's really kind of, even like we talk about pronouns a lot. In the contemporary challenge, like then it was, we're being separated into girls and boys dormitories. And now it's, well, we come into the teepee, the women sit on the left, the men sit on the right, or whatever your teachings are. I did that backwards.
You did your best. I'm so proud of you.
Women sit on the right, men sit on the left. Two-spirits sit wherever they want now.
Great, sweetie.
But like that, to that point, like it's just like, yes, we have these traditions. Yes, we have that old gendered language where we're talking about male roles and female roles, but we're not making space for everything in between and that fluidity and leaning into it. And one of the things that was really said to me when I first started in my role was fluidity is ancestral. And I had to really think about that for a minute, because I was like, wait a minute. Okay. And so like kind of contextualizing that fluidity into, okay, well, what does that mean for the roles you take on in your community? What does that mean for the roles you take on even within your own family structure? Like my kids, they always say like, oh yeah, Shannon's like dad, but like female. Because they both call me mom. But, you know, at the end of the day, like my partner is mom, and I'm mom. And I get all the ridiculous stuff that a dad would. And so when they're describing it to their friends or new people that they meet, they're like, yeah, that's Shannon. That's my Shannon, like dad or whatever. Like, that's kind of how they've contextualized it, because they're so used to having two moms that it's like, well, yeah, we don't have a dad, but whatever.
They grew up with fluidity, right? You find the feminine and the masculine within yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Word. As one would say.
I think that's a good transition I think you put a little top hat on that topic. That was beautiful. Thank you guys.
Sorry.
It feels like you're walking again. It's going to sound like a broken record.
Never.
But between two worlds, right? You're on that fine line between two certain perspectives that generally are hard to be accepted by.
Yeah, and it's constantly, it's like the best way I can describe it sometimes is it's like walking on one of those like, oh gosh, I'm going to mess this up. Like the trapeze.
A tightrope?
Tightrope, that thing. Yeah, word. Thank you. It's like walking on a tightrope where you're trying to maintain that middle space. But sometimes, depending on the crowd you're around, you have to lean more this way and almost fall off, or you have to lean this way and almost fall off, depending on who you're with, who you have to appease.
It can be lonely.
It can be. You know what? It used to feel really lonely, and now I have met so many amazing people in my life that have made me feel less lonely. And even like my partner, who is mint ally, and my other friends who are incredible, always taking the time to ask those questions so they can educate themselves. And they'll always be like, "Sorry, I'm confused. Can you clarify that for me?" And it's because they care. And it's because they want to know, and they want to know how to support me. And I'm quite blessed. But there was a hot minute there where it was very lonely and very confusing.
Well, I think too, like for me, I don't claim to be Métis. I always say I'm Cree. Just because I can't trace that lineage of what I understand Métis to be, that doesn't mean I'm not Métis somewhere within that lineage, but I'm just not educated enough on the Métis side of things to really claim that as something that I identify with. And so I think that it really depends on certain people's definition of Métis. And it's another one of those ones where if you ask, like, what does it mean to be Métis? You never get the same answer twice. Same way you never get the same answer twice when you say, what does it mean to be Two-Spirit?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be Indigenous? Like, I've known my whole life that I'm Indigenous, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
It means you're sacred.
Wow. And it's kind of that, like, do you have access to culture? Are you growing up away from culture? And really, like, those values that shape your life. When I kind of stepped into, again, my role as Two-Spirit program keeper, was looking at our TP polls and looking at those values that are really ingrained within those teachings and going, okay, so the way I was brought up was within the Catholic Church. But you can see where those, like,
within the church,
those things start to be mirrored. And it is that socialization process of, like, yes, you are learning to be kind to your neighbor, or you're learning to share with people, or you're, whatever it is. And it's just like a different way of storytelling, where we have scripture in Catholic Church, or we have the gospel. Within Indigenous culture, we have our TP poll teachings. And I hate that I'm comparing the two, but, like,
audacity.
Well, I know, but for me, that was the realization that I was like, oh, okay, we're talking about values, and that just hadn't come up before, where someone had contextualized it like that for me, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes more sense. And so it really came down to that, like, what does self-determination mean, and what is a self-determined identity?
There's a lot of no matter which religion you really go down, structured, organized religion, there's parallels between that and being Indigenous, right? It really just comes down to the core beliefs and the core teachings that you need to just be a good human being.
Yeah. It's funny. I have on my door going out of our house, there's a sticker that says, "Humankind be both." That's the whole assignment.
Yeah.
And I often walk around going, they didn't understand the assignment.
They didn't get it.
Often, like, within community, within our jobs, within the colonial world that we live in.
The whole structure that was built off of colonialism is built off of putting yourself above someone else.
Yeah.
Right. So it's hard to live in a world away from that. Through reconnecting with culture, especially with all of the different programs you guys are a part of right now, like, is there anything going on within the next year or so, like any sort of avenues that someone can really go down to reconnect with that culture, to reconnect with to find out if they are two-spirited, if they can hold that identity, and anything that you guys have gone down that has sort of helped you guys on this journey?
Shannon,
community, friends,
soapbox.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying that you've made me feel so safe and valid in my identity. So I just can't thank you enough for that. You've made me, like, feel so okay being who I am, and I couldn't have done that without you. And I really mean that. Like, you've brought so much hope and joy, and just looking forward to the space I occupy and being so proud of it and being okay occupying that space. So thank you. That's all you, dog. I love you.
Got you, cuz. I love you.
You're my favorite cousin.
I'm your only cousin. Thank you. I think that's giving me a lot of credit for a lot of work that you've done. I think the biggest thing for me in that journey is asking the questions. One of the first things my wife said to me when we started dating was, there's no weird questions, just weird people. And we are weird people, so go ahead. And it's just that it rings so true. And I always tell that story because ask the weird questions, because you're never going to get an answer if you don't. And, like, there's a good and bad way to go about it. Just don't be a jerk. You know what I mean? Like, ask the questions, ask with the good intention, ask with the intention of learning.
With learning, curiosity, with love, put love forward always. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think another big part of this, and this again comes from Corky, who was the elder who did the pipe ceremony today. You never stop learning, and
that's important.
You never claim to know everything. You never claim to be the expert, because there's always something you can learn from anyone. And you never know who you're going to interact with that's going to teach you something. And the amount of things my kids have taught me, like other than calling hot dogs glizzies, which I hate.
It is hilarious.
Oh, it's so stupid.
I love your kids. They teach me things every day.
Anyway, but like you never know what you're going to learn from someone, right? But you're never going to learn that if you don't give them the opportunity to share. And I think there's so much power in sharing your stories and sharing where you've come from. And like right back at you, you've taught me so many things that I'm like, it never even would have occurred to me to contextualize in that way. And I think the more of those just like really authentic conversations that you have, and the more you really just hold space for people and allow people to hold space for you, which is really hard for me because it's, you know, like there's always that like self-protection thing where you're like, oh, I don't want to overshare, or like, oh, they're going to judge me. But I think when you drop the judgments on yourself and you hold that space authentically, and you have conversations like this, and you have conversations with everyone, whether you agree with what they're saying or not, you're always going to take something away from that conversation, and you're always going to be able to apply what you've learned from that conversation in your everyday life. And so I think a large part of that finding culture, finding your identity, and finding that pride and that comfort in being who you are authentically just comes from being allowed to, just having someone who will share that space with you. And I always say, you know, like in Cree, we say to wow, like there's room, there's space. And I didn't learn about that until recently. But I just love the concept so much because there is always room, there is always space, there is always something to be learned. And whether that's negative or positive, good, bad, and different, you know, our elder always says good, bad, or indifferent, you learn something.
Always.
And I just think there's so much power in that. And there's so much power in sharing those stories. So share your stories, be authentic, be like weird and awkward and raw and emotional and whatever, because that's authentic to who you are. And that's where you get the most growth and the most learning from, is just sharing that space and having those conversations. And, you know, like I've never been as connected to culture as I am right now. And it's because someone said, hey, you should buy that drum. And then I start singing with our boss, or I start singing with a friend, or I don't even sing. I can't carry a tune.
Just
I'm
being
so
authentic
tone
to
deaf.
yourself, though.
And finding the people that allow you to feel safe doing it too.
Yeah. And like to explore those things that you didn't think you had permission to explore. Go explore them. Go ask the questions, because otherwise you're never going to know.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you guys so much for coming down here. I think that puts a nice, perfect top hat on everything that we want to talk about today. And I know we're fighting the weather right now, so we do have to get out of here and stuff. So we do have to get out of here because there's literally a storm rolling in outside of this teepee, and we got to tear the teepee down and stuff. But I just want to thank you guys again for coming out and for sharing your guys' perspective. If you guys want to follow Shannon and Emilee on their journey, their handles for Instagram, their social media handles will be in our description underneath this episode. Please feel free to reach out to us if this has touched you in any sort of way in reconnecting with your culture. We'd love to hear your guys' stories in the comments, and hope you guys tune into the next episode. Hi.
Hi.
All right, let's tear this mother down.